I just pressed live. And
Hi guys, and welcome to the Gin and Tonic Show. I'm your host Moose, and this is my producer Nick. Our main discussion is about Islam in the 21st century. However, we will critique other religions and ideologies. We condemn any form of discrimination, violence, misogyny, slavery. We do, however, embrace many perspectives and free speech if it is factual and correct, and not based on any hate. Throughout the show, we will be exploring different religious beliefs, practices, and their impact on society, ranging from politics, interpersonal relationships, and mental health of believers and non-believers. We hope to create an open dialogue for those who feel they're not heard, especially those who have doubts and have left their belief systems. If you are interested in exploring the complex topic of religion and wish to be part of an honest and open dialogue, this is the show for you. We also welcome feedback and discussion from our audience and listeners. The Gin and Tonic Show is a free speech platform where you can express your ideas without any fear of violence and repercussions or any consequences. Please do join our discussion in the live chat as well as the comments. Thank you for stopping by and enjoy the Gin and Tonic Show.
good evening, everybody from UK, Canada, United States, Europe, Sweden. I know I said Europe and Sweden separately, but different time zones.
You're racist. You're
Shut
racist.
up.
Why aren't you saying Africa?
Shut up.
Actually, sometimes we Scandinavians actually do consider us as being separate from mainland Europe.
Right?
Oh no,
So it's
I
not
wasn't
that
worrying about
wrong.
that. You never said anything about Africa.
All right, fine.
That is why we usually say to go down into Europe. Gå ner till Europa.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
North Africa, if you're watching from Pakistan, where this video is potentially censored, India, like wherever you're watching this from, Far East, because we're going to cover that, and maybe Russia. I'm sorry, don't get me banned. So I'm going to say Russia too, and Australia. Greetings, everybody, and I am joined by two celestial beings. So I'm joined by a Satan, and I'm joined by a very well-mannered, very well-cultured. He will come into your nightmares and say, history and society are complicated. Culture, Ginny.
Yes, I'm here to complicate things, as usual.
As usual, yes. Today, because we have a Satan, Ginny and I will be sharing the stick that's dipped in Zamzam water. Because we have an extra Satan to deal with. So how are you doing, Satan, today?
I'm doing well, considering the topic that we're doing.
Yeah, so today I think we're gonna give a trigger warning for today's topic. It's a heavy subject matter. So it's gonna deal with assault. It's gonna deal with human trafficking. It's gonna deal with what do you call it? What's happening in the United Kingdom?
So does it
So
also include pepper? You said assault.
I said assault, not a salt, boy. All right, yeah, I'm already dipping the stick into the Zamzam water. I'm already sticking that stick. All right, so
Please don't be so salty in this comment
hey!
in this commentary.
I'm dipping this extra. I'm dipping the stick in the extra into the water. Both of you. All right. So, like,
Hello, the dude that buy this.
hello, dude.
Hello.
Bye. Yes. So, hello, dear viewers. So, we are gonna just once again, like trigger warning. This is gonna be heavy. If you miss it, my apologies. If you missed the trigger warning, so this is gonna be some heavy subject matter that involves human trafficking, human abuse of human beings, abuse of women, that is, children. So, if this subject matter bothers you, you have the opportunity to stay away, or you can, if you watch this later, you can kind of skip this part of the discussion as well. So that's up to you. It's okay. All right. So I'm going to present the article that we're discussing today, and this is from, even though it's from Op India, but Nick, or aka Shaitan, shared it with me. This is about the grooming gangs. That is. So this is something that Nick and I were discussing. We wanted to cover this for a
I do
while.
know that the Daily Mail also covered this and a lot of other UK newspapers because.
So it's not just
Though I just want to say one thing. It's
yes.
pretty clear that this has happened.
Mm-hmm. It's definitely
And
clear.
that, yeah, because there are multiple independent sources that has reported this. Though I'm kind of iffy upon OP India. I do not know about this, newspapers and its biases and alignment.
Yeah, and I get it. Like, there are sources that are going to be biased too. So it's like I get it, but at the same time, like, this has been happening so often that we have to kind of consider all sources. This one actually went into quite a lot of detail. So this one was very interesting. So it was an investigation by the Newcastle police. This was Operation Sanctuary, codenamed Operation Sanctuary, was launched in 2013. And this was revealed that more than 700 girls were reportedly enslaved and abused for years. And this is Newcastle, the report by Newcastle police, by the way. Minor girls were taken to parties and laden with drugs like cocaine, cannabis, alcohol, and mephedrone before being raped and abused. So,
And a small trick that I covered. Let's try not to get our channel banned, and let's use the word grape instead of the R word.
we can say R word. We'll just say
Yeah.
R word. R word, beaten and killed. So UK grooming gangs, how minor girls, the youngest 9, were groomed, R-worded, beaten, and killed by Muslim predators across cities as authorities turned a blind eye. So this is what do you call it? So arguing on behalf of Insar Hussain, one of the 8 accused. By the way, this is so Pakistani in the name. Immediately, it's just like, oh no, it's one of my people, isn't it? And I'll be taking breaks. My apologies, because I'm sipping tea as well. In the I apologize if I butchered this, Rockdale child sexual abuse, Merrick Williams on 27 said the victim, called girl A, displayed a vivid imagination. The trial in the Rockdale grooming gang scandal has been ongoing in the Minshall Street Crown Court in Manchester, United Kingdom. 8 men, all but one being Muslims, are being tried for raping minor girls over a period of 4 years. But the chilling facts of the case tell us that the abuse are not new to the UK, and the exploitation has been going on unabated for decades. So this is the disturbing part of it, because it's been going on for a while. I thought this was a more recent phenomenon.
I also just want to that you should notice that all but one being Muslims. And
yes.
I am not going here to defend, Islamic views on women and such, but I do think that their religious background isn't really the thing that has made them do this. This has more to do with just generally creeps being sexual abusers and rapists, and these people getting away with it due to surrounding contexts of not of people not daring to
Yeah,
actually
yeah,
do their job and actually catch these people due to this potential backlash from accusations of racism and the like.
yeah. I have accusations of racism, accusations of Islamophobia,
Yeah,
xenophobia.
that.
So this is where can this be like what do you call it? Like this is I've seen a similar case in Pakistan too. And this I feel like this is a like this is carried over from Pakistan and some Arab countries into here as well, which there are gangs that do operate like this. Now,
I mean, there are people that have those very backwards views, yes. But the
mhm,
issue isn't so much these people actually committing crimes, because you will always have people that commit crimes. The issue is how the surrounding, context around them makes
yes,
it so that they are not caught and prosecuted as they should
exactly,
have been from the
exactly,
beginning.
yes,
They're
and that's
treated with silk clothes due to, fears of accusations of racism, xenophobia, Islamophobia, or whatever.
yeah, and again, like in terms of like child abuse, even the LGBTQ plus community has faced the backlash of child abuse, even though the entire community shouldn't be blamed for it. There will always be certain individuals who are just fucking creeps, you know. So
There are, so I'm not
yeah,
saying that it's more common or anything like that
oh yeah,
when it comes to even these groups. But what I'm saying is, when you create kind of like a view that any accusations towards people of any minority status, be it sexual,
mm,
ethnic,
yes,
religious, whatever, or just a result of racism, then you
yeah,
create protection for people that are of these groups but have nefarious intent to actually
exactly,
commit crime with impunity, which
right,
means ultimately that when people see these people commit these crimes and get away with it, it creates even more resentment towards these groups. So you are
mhm,
not helping them by creating these cultures of not prosecuting or not actually keeping members of these communities or groups responsible, because when
yeah,
you do that you're just making it worse.
yes, and
Hello, the Baudrillard.
oh, hello, Debodro. Yes, so definitely, Jenny, you are spot on because if like you do need to hold people responsible for crimes, don't let them get away. But just because they're a minority or just because they have some protected status, crime happens. Nip it in the bud, Um, also, like the fact that it's going on for decades is disturbing. Like Rockdale grooming gangs, I'll continue with the article, are known for Rockdale child sexual abuse scandal, which dates to earlier in 2008. The grooming gangs largely comprised of men of Pakistani descent. I knew it. I knew it. Who raped who R-worded young girls and supplied them to their connections further to be R-worded and abused for years. The organized gangs continue to be active to this day. This is the disturbing part. They continue to be active to this day, and this problem could have been resolved. The Rockdale scandal came at the time when the UK was still struggling.
Might I add something to in
Yeah,
order? I will play devil's advocate, even if I do not really want to here. How do
yeah,
we know that they still continue and this is not just
yeah,
sensationalism on the part of
yeah.
the?
This could be.
Because if we know that people are getting abused like this still, and we knew that which gangs are doing it, wouldn't we have caught them by now
Mm,
after the first gang was sent in when this was revealed? So I
yeah,
do think that this part might be a little bit propagandistic, or at
could be,
least
could be,
skewed
could be
in at
potentially.
least some way.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's a good
I,
eye. Good eye, that is.
A
Good
better
eye.
way would have said, and there is still a risk that various groups are doing this behind the scenes,
Yeah.
getting protected by
Or
people
even
being
they say,
afraid to confront it.
yeah, or can be
Can be, yeah,
potentially be active. Like you
yeah,
always use the word
potentially, or risk. I said risk, but
yes. Yes.
potentially. You should have used that kind of language. This is a thing that I think is very important when you look at articles by newspapers or any sort of
Mm.
source, that you pick up these nuances because they tell a lot, and they are also implications about things that might not be that accurate or true, but rather a reflection of the newspapers or sources biases.
Yes. And
It's
I think
important here that even if we are against what is described here, and that we are against maybe
yes.
some practice that might be associated with this or some sort of belief, it is also important that we do not excuse other sorts of falsehoods or skewed,
Propaganda.
propaganda.
Yeah.
Yes, because we
And
need to keep a tight ship.
yeah,
Is
and
that how you say it in English?
yeah, it's a you're running a tight ship, that is. You need to
Yeah, yeah.
run a tight ship. So
Sorry, English is not my native
no,
language,
it's
so
okay. You
I
need to
something.
keep a tight ship. We usually run a tight ship.
Yeah.
So I think yeah I to add to that as well, like we get it, like there's especially like language is very very important to like watch out, because sometimes like there's a professional wrestler promoter called Eric Bischoff. He did a TED talk on this where he said that news outlets have taken the formula of professional wrestling like a lot, that is, which they're more focused on making you feel something rather than relaying the facts. So you have to be very, very objective and careful when you read the news. Is that what, like, be wary of the language. Like sometimes the language is structured in such a way that it's making you feel something rather than look at the facts objectively. So that was a good eye by Ginny, like, so we have to be as objective as we possibly can. The Rockdale scandal came at the time when the UK was struggling to crack down on pedophilic gangs of Rotterdam, known for the Rotterdam sex abuse scandal, which was active from the 1980s to 2013. Yikes. Pedophiles of Rotterdam, too, were Pakistanis. Similarly, more than 1,000 children were exploited in the Telford abuse scandal, which went on for years as authorities turned blind.
The Bodrios commented here.
Yes.
This source is known for spreading disinformation, very far right fear mongering. Yeah. I suspected that because
Yeah.
I thought up India. It sounds like
It's like
something
more
that it comes from India, and I know that Hindutva groups and everything there. So I was just feeling.
a little like
Yeah, I have other
yeah,
sources on this as well, and I
yeah,
tried matching it with the NCA and everything.
yeah.
And
So
so
you
far,
know
this
what?
particular article is really accurate in terms of how it summarized the actual events that happened.
Yeah. So do you?
yeah, but since I didn't know, I didn't want to say that it was definitely as such. But when I saw, for example, when they made these statements that they didn't have grounds for, or about
Certain
it's still
statements,
continuing, and all the other things, I did get very suspicious, even
and
more
also like
suspicious.
this part too. Like I feel like they only said
Yeah.
Pakistanis, but they could be
Yes.
other South Asians as well. So potentially, because it could also be a South Asian community problem as well too. And Pakistanis are the scapegoat in the matter, because Muslims from India, Muslims from Bangladesh have a very similar culture to Muslims from Pakistan as well too. So this is definitely something to look out for. That is, and
It's good. I still think that it's good that we are going through this article because we can show how things can be skewed, and how even truth can be used in propagandistic
yeah.
narratives
Yes, and
in various
again,
ways.
yeah, the facts are there. It's just that we have to like be a bit careful, and also like this is more, as like I said, from India.
Did you that by this have has posted a new comment all I can say is I regularly visit the area in
Yeah, you are.
Yorkshire, also involved in the grooming scandal,
There's this clear
incorporating the town,
segregation
including the
between.
town I grew up in. There's a clear
Mm.
segregation between communities.
Yeah, so after this, we'll also look at another article by the UK government. So after we finish this article, we'll skim through this article. We'll look at another one by the UK government. So you know, that way we can have.
When you wrote "inc," I thought incorporated rather than included, because that's the kind of shortening I'm, you
Uh,
know, that's the kind of abbreviation that I'm kind of used to.
yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
Uh,
All right. So Rochdale, Rotterdam, Oxford, Telford, Leeds, Birmingham, Norwich, Burnley, High Wycombe, Leicester. I'm saying that right, eh? Leicester, Dewsbury, Middlesbrough, Peterborough, Bristol, Halifax, Newcastle, Huddersfield, and Hull. Huddersfield is known for the Muslim area, that isn't it? And Hull are only some of the regions in the United Kingdom where largely Islamist grooming gangs freely went about their perversion.
to be honest, here again, Islamist. I mean, how much do we actually know that they were Islamist and not just
Yeah, not
happen to be from a Muslim background? How do we not know that these aren't just grooming gangs of creeps generally, and it
yeah,
has very little to do with religion?
yeah, and definitely we'll look at other like another article after this to see like the difference. So the
Yeah.
ongoing trials, Rockdale trials, continue to serve as a chilling reminder of the Rotterdam horror, even as political correctness has shielded the Islamists and delayed justice for victims. Now, of course, there's the
Rother.
accusation of the leftist British media, even though British media isn't exactly leftist, to be honest. So, like, it's fairly central rightish.
Most the dude abides Rotherham, not Rotterdam.
Oh,
Sorry to correct.
Rotterdam. Sorry to correct. Yeah, Rotterdam. Okay, Rotterdam.
Rotherham.
Rotherham.
Rotherham,
Okay, Rotherham.
not
Oh,
Rotterdam. Or is it
Rotherham. My apologies.
Rotherham?
Yeah.
Or
Oh my
sorry,
goodness.
your names are sometimes a bit hard to know how they are pronounced.
Yeah, Rotherham horror. My apologies. My oh my goodness.
Yeah.
My brain. So I just saw it now. Rotherham. Yeah. So this says the leftist British media has been complicit in this crime, diverting focus from the plight of the victims by brushing the Pakistani Muslim identity of the accused under the carpet. How true is this?
This this is something that they have no clear. They could have easily talked about. They did it in this article or did something to give credence to their claim, but they just let it hang out there. And this is also an example of why you should be very careful, even with articles that describe something that is known to be true, because
No.
included in these true statements, they usually push in a lot of other sorts of things that are biased or even outright lies
Like
in it.
very discriminatory statements, that is,
Yeah.
that carry discriminatory meanings. And yeah, we are trying our best to toe the line between facts and discrimination as well. So we have to be fairly careful. And also, of course, like there is some truth in the statement in that the media, like whether it was the media or the authorities, have been fairly complicit and kind of like,
Yeah. There
brushing.
is a grain of truth in it.
Yeah, there's a grain of
When
truth,
it's
like, truth under the carpet, that is. Like,
but when it's just left hanging like that, when it's
yeah.
not specified, for example, they could have mentioned some sort of source that talked about how the police were reluctant to do this because they feared the backlash or something like that.
Yes, that
Or
would have
they,
been more accurate.
yeah, that could have been more accurate. They could have mentioned, for example, this newspaper tried to, lessen the importance or lessen some sort of matter connected to
Yeah,
this. Try
absolutely.
to downplay something.
Yeah,
And choose some example rather than just let it hang there.
absolutely. Now, let's continue. The Islamist appeasers And again, it's a very loaded term, but
Yeah.
some grain of truth in it. I'm sorry, there's some grain of truth in it, but it's a loaded term. Are complicit in the injustice to the victims and rubbing salt in the wounds when they cry racism every time the identity of the accused Pakistanis is revealed. Again, you have to give examples, though. Here's the two-part story of the scandals that gripped many British towns and how delayed justice has exposed the Islamist apologists of Great Britain. Okay, so Rockdale, Telford, Rotherham, or the entire UK. It all began in the 1980s in the town of Telford. Vulnerable children as young as 11 were picked up, R-worded, beaten, sold, and killed by grooming gangs for a full 40 years. The young girls were tossed from one perpetrator, I would say R-wordist, to another, most of whom were from the Muslim community of British Pakistani origins and worked in an organized manner. 3 girls were murdered and 2 others died in tragedies linked to the scandal. As many as 1,000 girls suffered in a town of 170,000 people. That's like 1 out of 170, which is still like higher than it should be honest. A similar racket was unfolding in Rotherham, parallel. Around 1,500 girls were R-worded, abused, sold, and bought by men of Pakistani descent in a town of 260,000 people. Many victims were gang R-worded. The abuse went on unabated from 1997 to 2013. In Rockdale, horror began in 2002. At least 47 girls were subjected to abuse. Such has been the response of the administrative and legal authorities that the grooming gangs continue to walk freely on the streets of Great Britain. Again, how many we need to know. We need to know how many are still like at large. That is,
And they always leave these statements hanging. So
yeah,
even if the thing that they are describing here is true, they add these sort of hanging statements
yeah,
that should not be in a serious article. This should
yeah.
be talked about, and there is an issue in that people avoid these sort of sensitive topics because the news need to talk about sensitive
Oh,
topics.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Like it's definitely
But it's important that you do not fill it with these sort of hanging statements.
of course, of course. This is the picture of the convicted predators. Um, Many victims were living under the care of social services. Young and impressionable girls from vulnerable backgrounds were usual targets of the jihadi abusers who I don't know how jihadi they are. I don't know how jihadi they are because I wouldn't necessarily paint them as jihadi because that would be a different. That would be more like terrorist group or something, who brainwashed their victims. A love grooming jihad-like pattern. I think this love jihad is also like from an Indian term, that is, and there is
Yeah,
some there is some grain of truth in it. But yeah, the issue there is the love jihad, so it is kind of inserting an Indian issue into like a UK issue.
and it's also kind of like you know the term. I mean, love jihad is also kind of like misleading as well. When
Yes.
I sure this isn't an area I'm that familiar with, but I have encountered this too, and I mean, there is no such thing as in the theological terms. I love jihad.
Oh,
It's
definitely.
just a kind of bad behavior done by individuals. It's
That's
important that we can realize that
yeah.
there are Islamic traditions that do contain a lot of very bad things, like traditions about holy wars against non-believers and especially polytheistic non-believers and such, and that there are traditions regarding slavery that certain people believe in. But
Yes.
it's also important to note when it's not the case.
Yeah. So and definitely like you wanna be. I don't like the term love jihad because again it's definitely it's not exactly accurately describing of what's happening. But it's mixing jihad, which is the fight against non-believers, with just grooming or love. That is, it's not exactly like they're two different things, generally speaking. So But I guess it's a buzz term that the media tends to, like, for example, like terms like even um, a YouTube channel. Okay, YouTube channel. The Nigerian interviewed. She was 9 year olds. Oh, really? And there's like, okay, Sid David is a desire to convert non-female destiny, but of course, non-Muslim men can't marry Muslims. There is a similar issue in Pakistan as well of the kidnapping of young non-Muslim girls, convert them to Islam, and then kind of like their abuse and such, forced marriage of sorts.
Yeah.
This, however, seems to be not the aim goal here. Doesn't seem
But
to
it
be.
isn't. It isn't really. It's kind of like a result of individuals doing this and having
Yeah.
these effed up ideas. It's not. It's something that is part of Islamic traditions or something like that.
Yeah, it's the mentality, and I think
Yes, it's a mentality.
here it doesn't seem to be the conversion doesn't seem to be the goal. The goal seems to
No.
be fucked up acts that they want to do.
Yeah. In this case, it's just.
Yeah.
It seems to just be a group of creeps that have managed to slink under the radar due to the fact that people have been so anxious to actually confront this great
confront them.
injustice due to fears of being
Called
called
Islamophobic.
whatever,
Yeah,
or
called
getting
Islamophobic.
in hot waters due to targeting a minority when you actually should target these people. The issue isn't that they are from a certain group. The issue here is the acts that they are doing.
Of course.
And the issue is, and the secondary issue is that there are people that will defend minorities doing these sorts of acts or defend against any accusations of these acts because they think it's a good thing to always be on the side of the minority regardless of the evidence or accusations leveled in relation to that evidence.
Yeah, and of course, now let's continue with this. Love, groom, and jihad-like pattern had emerged, wherein the victim was befriended by the abuser to gain her trust and manipulate her into believing the savages. This actually happens there are incidents like this in Pakistan. It's reminding me of incidents like in Pakistan where there have been recent cases where they have targeted Muslim girls as well too. So not just non-Muslims in Pakistan. So there could be something similar. An investigation by the Newcastle police, codenamed Operation Sanctuary, was launched in 2013, revealed more than 700 girls were reportedly enslaved and abused for years. Minor girls were taken to parties laden with drugs like cocaine, cannabis, alcohol, or mephedrone, or being R-worded and abused. One of the victims, under the care of Newcastle Council, one of the victims was under the care of Newcastle Council when she was R-worded. With care of, this makes no sense. Under the care of when she was or said she was. This is a bit weird.
One of the victims was under the care of the Newcastle Council when she was
R-worded.
Yeah.
This one's a bit.
I mean, she was probably under some sort of care system, and they got access to it. There was some sort of corruption scandal involved with these gangs too, with officials as well.
Oh crap!
If I remember correctly.
Yo, that's messed up.
So this was also a case of I thought it also were a couple of natives that were involved as well.
Yeah,
native British people. So this entire scandal was more of a general pedophile ring rather than just some sort of ethnic singular group thing. And it's also important to note, and I say this again, it's not the Baudrillard takes up these quote here, it's their culture, as kind of like it would excuse it, or it is used as an attack against a group, saying that it's in their culture to act like this. I don't even think that this is in their culture. What I do think, though, generally, and what I've seen in certain immigrant communities from my own personal experience, having worked with people from there and having, interacted with a lot of immigrant communities, is that you do get more people that are problematic within immigrant communities due to the very fact that those that migrate from their home countries are usually the ones that have gotten into trouble in their home countries to a greater degree than other people. Sure, there are people that migrate that are perfectly fine and have gotten either into trouble or need better economy elsewhere, or needs a job or have other reasons. But you do have a higher percentage of problematic people, because those are the ones that do tend to migrate when they get into trouble with the local law or the local customs or other reasons. So you do have a greater percentage of dysfunctional people from immigrant communities, and these cause issues when you do not when they are not taken, when they are not treated as they ought to be by the justice system due to various reasons of
Yeah.
You
Also,
also have the
contextual
there's
if I-
there's a few, yeah, there's a two comments that I want to address. White females are absolutely seen as a prize by Muslim men. Showing a white female rejecting her Western life to wear hijab, what can be better? There is a weird fetish on this. This, I will
yeah,
say,
but again, it's not the religion, it's individuals
yeah,
having
and
developed this. And sure, it's kind of like I've seen it in certain subcultures that develop this very weird thing, but it's kind of
yeah.
like it's them developing this very creepy,
There's different niches.
exotifying,
Yeah, it's not all Muslim
fetishism.
men. Yeah, because it's not all
No.
Muslim men. Because I've encountered general Muslims from different backgrounds who are actually, like, again, there's fetishization has different, and fetishization has different layers. That is, one can be just attraction to a white person. One can just be, oh, you see them as below you. Then there's those who like, oh, you want to like destroy them. You know what I mean? So there's different layers to it. So
Yeah,
it gets
I mean,
more complex. Like Ginny says, this gets
but
more complex.
this kind of view of wanting the white wife is kind of like similar to white dudes wanting that Asian wife
Yes,
and
it's similar.
glorifying that. It's very similar. It should be more considered the same as that rather than something that is directly related to Islam or something like
Yeah,
that.
it's not
This is
necessarily
an entirely
Islam.
separate thing.
Yeah, it's
It's
not
not
necessarily
entirely separate, because you could argue that the views proposed by Islam lends itself to a certain sort of patriarchal worldview that creates these sort of subcultures secondarily. But that is an entirely different argumentation, which
Yeah,
I will neither say that I agree with or say that I disagree with. I will just say that it's not directly something that results. It is at most a secondary thing that is far removed.
yeah, and
But
keep in
but
mind,
it's
of course, there's something called like the yellow fever as well. It's more tolerated, that is, even though, like, there is history of white men abusing girls of Asian or indigenous backgrounds, that is, especially in Canada. There was an issue for a while. So, like, we have to be very careful with how we frame the language too. So, because, like, like I said, there's some different layers, that is. There's, like, it's messed up. Humans are fucked up, let's just say that. Even our attractions and fetishes are influenced by our colonial, messed up slave trade past. All right.
I mean, might I just point something out as well?
Yes.
Does it help having such a repressed culture suddenly immigrate to a Western liberal culture? Sure, that might be part of, in certain individual cases, a problem, but I do still think it's more a result of the fact that problematic individuals that didn't function in their home country will actually not function after they have immigrated either to the Western world or the countries in the Western world, because there are people that are fundamentally they have a background of being problematic even in their home countries, but then they move and they are still problematic in the countries they moved to, but they moved because the laws wouldn't prosecute them there. So you have that
Yeah.
aspect. I think that aspect is much more important.
Yeah, and of course, like part of it is also like turning a blind eye to it, is also like worsened the problem than it should have been. It should have worsened it just could have. I haven't got a problem.
I haven't got a problem with immigration, but letting a death cult child marrying ideology in will send us back to the dark ages.
I mean, I'm a bit like, I wouldn't frame it like that,
I wouldn't either.
but
I mean,
there
I
is
wouldn't
some,
either. I mean,
yeah,
I do admit that there are traditions within Islam that are extremely violent and brutal, and there
yeah,
are these kind of
fucked up.
traditions that practice child marriage or think that child marriage is good due to the fact that Muhammad practiced it, and thus they say that. But I mean, I do still think that it's also important to note that Islam as a religion, and I will say this, and I will get a lot of flack here, is very vast with a lot of interpretations, a lot of differing traditions, and you do not see the same problems coming from, for example, Bosnian people or people from Albania, as you see from, for example, people coming from
Like
s-
example, like I'll just use the word, just use Pakistan, just use Pakistan. I won't be
all right, that I was thinking about mentioning
Pakistan. Yeah,
some of the less developed Arab countries, as I'm more used to them. I
yeah,
know, for
or like
example, I
Yemen,
do,
or
yeah,
Yemen or something.
or Sudanese, or
Yeah, yeah,
some
yeah.
sort. I'm not saying that this against Sudanese people. I know a lot of Sudanese people that are perfectly fine individuals and are very good. Personally, I have friends that are Sudanese that I've even gone and eaten at the Eid al Fitr and such. And I do know them very well, and they are very fine people. But I do also know that there are people from Sudan are generally a lot more conservative than, for example, people from Lebanon, Lebanon, or from Tunis, for example, in the Arab world,
But I
and
also,
even less liberal if you compare them to, for example, Albanians or
yeah, yeah.
Bosnians.
Also,
It's important to know that there are very much
yeah, yeah,
differences in how people believe in Islam and what traditions they follow.
yeah.
And
And
culture
those,
does play a big role here. And there are
yeah,
also individual differences and a lot of other
absolutely.
reasons that are, connected to things outside of culture and religion, like immigration, immigrants tending to have a higher rate of criminals due to criminals fleeing their countries because they don't want to face justice.
Yeah, yeah. That's also an unfortunate reality. That's an unfortunate.
If I also
Yeah.
like to add, doesn't this remind you of the case in, I believe, Norway, where they had to do immigration classes for people from Middle Eastern
Really?
countries, saying you're not allowed to touch women here if they're wearing like certain types of clothes, just because they're wearing those kind of clothes. You have to ask for consent first. And there was like this
Really?
entire like video I had to watch of where they like, it was like the dumbest shit. It was like, oh, just because a woman's wearing shorts in summer doesn't mean she wants you to grope her thigh. It means that it's probably hot and she's wearing uh
Yeah.
yeah, there's this
Dude, what?
video that I used to watch.
You know what? You know what? That's weirdly, it's weirdly practical. Let's honestly, this is weirdly practical. Like,
Poya Satori have two comments
yeah,
here. First, so many believe in their local nationalism. Two
convert
ups.
immigrants. I think that's
You took his last comments here.
oh, okay. So
So
many
many
people,
believe in their local nationalism to the extent they think that
right,
they have a right to seek a better life, but others don't. Having lived in free countries, I know it's all BS.
their local
And
national.
under him, borders should be abolished.
Yeah, I mean, borders
His second comment under it.
borders
Take
are
take it up. No. Now you jumped to
okay.
his.
Borders should be abolished. Yeah, borders should be
No,
abolished.
I disagree here because I think borders are important in order to keep up a rule of law.
Yeah,
Personally, that's my view of it.
Yeah, I think it's not only untrue, but the opposite. But if immigrants are problematic, they'll deport immediately. We get into more trouble than. I know in.
Yeah, yes, that might be true when they do commit crimes.
Mhm.
Might there are a lot of factors that might change this or might influence this. But I'm saying that if you have already committed a crime in your home country, and you risk maybe facing justice there, or or people don't trust you because they know that you are not reliable, or you are an individual that are kind of scummy, then you are more likely to move elsewhere and try the better waters elsewhere, so to say.
Also, so many things go behind that. Shops and industries will close. Pay fine does crap for education businesses. I mean, I wouldn't
The
say.
reanimator, you are being too much of a doomer. This won't
Yeah,
happen in the West.
I don't think so. Because keep in mind, even in Islamic countries, they don't close a business for prayers always, because there is an issue of like you got to run your business. You
No,
know.
they don't. We can't even deport a convicted terrorist in the UK. I doubt they can in the US. I mean,
Actually,
they do deport people
yeah, yeah, yeah,
quite
yeah.
regularly. It's just that it's kind of like it could be said that they should deport more, but
Yeah,
it
and
does
I think
happen, and for
certain
a lot
stories,
less than just terrorism.
yeah, there's certain stories that get more famous. That is,
Yes,
I
it's
think
just
recently
it's
we had Shamima Begum. Remember, we had Shamima Begum who got not only just like refused to be re-entered into the UK, but like the UK government has put in an like almost like a permanent blockade on her to enter because she's an ISIS wife, and so like it this is there's so the UK government has done the right step in of course the US has taken back some ISIS wives, which is messed up, but then again, like the UK has, I will give them that, they've taken a step. um like yeah, in the US they can deport a convict. I hope they can. There's what do you know, you I mean you technically can. It's just that it has to be established, like the credibility, because I work in refugee law, right? Like you have to, the credibility. There's also the issue of are you a threat to society as well too. So
the issue with these questions, not these questions or these statements about deportation and the like, is that they are usually see posed as if the states are either zero people are getting deported or everyone is getting deported when they should. I mean, the truth is usually somewhere in between.
yeah,
It's not one or zero in the
yeah,
answering here. It's usually degrees. And we could argue about the degrees and how many ought to be deported or not, or if the laws should be changed
okay.
or such.
Also,
But it's not.
halal. There's nothing wrong with providing halal food. I just have to address this. There's nothing wrong with providing halal food or a prayer room. That's just like I've seen this in my university. It created no issues whatsoever. It's
But Moose, the thing is,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
in as compared to the laws in Canada and the UK,
yeah,
in UK, there's schools. If a school is secular,
yeah.
then it has to remain 100% secular.
Of
So
course.
Yeah.
they can't provide anything
I,
that
I,
has some
I
religious
also don't think
connotation.
that's I also don't think that state schools should, make exceptions for certain religious practices if they can't do it for all.
Yeah, because I did have my
Because I think state schools should generally be secular and not
yeah, yeah.
give preference to any religion.
No, if a prayer room is provided and then all religions can come in to do their prayer. For example, like we had in our university, we had a prayer room. Like there were most like is prayer mats, but also like a church like setting as well too. Um, so it was like I respected that, to be honest. Like it's like okay, every person can come here or wants to like meditate or something like that. So this I was okay with, that is. But don't make it like just like you guys said, yeah, Islamic centric. Don't make it Islam
Yeah,
centric.
yeah. The dude I buy this no state schools in Lancashire provide halal food, and they wanted to
Interesting.
provide unstunned halal food. I mean, that's kind of the state then giving in and providing a treatment according to religious traditions. I don't think that's. I mean, if you really have a religious tradition that it says that you need to eat certain types of food, I think personally that you ought to provide it for yourself then, because
Yeah.
that is something that is up to your own choice of following this religion or not.
Yeah, and I think it should be an optional thing too. Like, hey, there's the vegetarian, the vegan, or halal option, or kosher option, for example. For certain meat.
Kosher is the same as halal in my view, and that the state shouldn't provide it. It should
Yeah,
be provided by the people that choose to follow these religious rules.
Yeah, of course. So they can like set up shops and stuff. But anyway, let's continue with the article itself because we did divert a little bit.
Yeah, Lancashire is a county. I meant the state schools there.
Yeah. Also, back to the article. Now there's a certain shift. Those prosecuted were largely British-born Bangladeshi, Pakistani, Iraqi, Iranian, and Turkish, with the exception of one Indian. Mostly living in the west end of Newcastle. Now, finally, this article just shifts. In the mention, it says, oh, they're mostly Pakistani. But there are other people of other ethnic backgrounds, like Bangladeshi, Iraqi, Iranian, and Turkish, and Indian. Like, so this is where, like, the article, like, contradicts itself. Like, so they are not just of Pakistani background. There's of other backgrounds as well, too, that are creeps, this ring. Most were living in the west end of Newcastle. The conspirators not only perpetrated and abetted R-words, but also arranged for the transport of the victims to the R-wordists, arranged premises to perpetrate the crime, and dealt with the drugs. So yeah, even if you are not directly involved in the R-word action itself, you're also like aiding and abetting. You're also charged for aiding and abetting.
Yeah, you're an assistatory to
yes,
to these acts.
The transport, the drugs, and the means for the criminal to commit the crime. That's where you're also charged with aiding and abetting the crime itself. So this is something like we also have to keep in mind. Like not just R-wordists or rapists were caught, but also like aiding and abetting people who were aiding in this crime as well too. So the gangs put their hands on every minor girl they could. In Huddersfield, one victim attempted suicide, another had an abortion, and two had learning disabilities. Yikes. Despite the distressing nature of the crimes, the investigations have been painfully slow that in Rockdale, 8 more men were charged as recently as on the 27th of July this year. So there has been finally a step up in the investigations. In Telford, the Pakistani perpetrators were running a R-word house while they made the victims believe they were in love. They bought alcohol and cigarettes to lure the children. The accused, working as taxi drivers or food delivery drivers, would target the victims by offering them a lift, buying them fast food, and topping up their mobile phones to eventually make them believe that they were lovers. Or not just lovers, but sometimes also like persons they can trust. That is,
Yeah.
There's also like a level of trust that you invest. Studies call this the boyfriend method or the lover boy model. It is better known as love jihad or grooming jihad in India. There we go. It's known as love jihad.
I mean, it isn't really love you had or grooming you had. This is just the same method as these sort of child abusers have always used. I mean, there is a reason why the phrase "Do you want some candy?" is associated with pedophiles.
Right.
This is just the same stuff. It's just instead of using normal sweets, it's just some other food.
Yeah,
or cigarettes or other, addictive stuff.
Yeah, like especially with alcohol or drugs, for example.
Yeah.
So, so this is another method of, trying to lure your victims, or even building a a sort of like trust. Because again, let's face it, some kids are rebellious at certain ages too, right? So
Yeah.
they
They
get
want to
like,
test the sort of
yeah,
illicit stuff, and thus they are there and they abuse it and use it for their own nefarious ends.
yes,
And I mean, it's again, this is why I also think it's important that we sometimes look past the religious, connection and just look at this as being just a case of. I am the first to say that there are enormous problems again within certain Islamic traditions and the like, but we also need to be very careful in that we do not say that this is because of Islam or it's because of it when it isn't. When the true source of the issue here are that these are, just general creeps doing
yeah,
general criminal activity, but they do it usually under the protection of
mm,
people that do not want to confront this due to the fact that they fear backlash of being called various things
yeah,
when they do confront it.
yeah, absolutely. Like right here, it says it's better known as love jihad in India, wherein the accused is almost always a Muslim, and the victim a non-Muslim, and the act even has religious sanction. Now,
It doesn't.
like, yeah, there is like there's no like Islamic law that says, oh, you should kidnap a girl or something like that. There is, of course, for prisoners of war, yes, that boy one is fine.
Yeah, but that's in a war context. I mean,
Yeah,
there is still a very. I mean, the kind of sneaky bastard acts that these people do aren't kind of like the glorious religious warrior ideal,
yeah,
really,
yeah,
is
and
it?
also like the India issue, the one in India has some religious goal behind it, whereas this act in the UK, for example,
I mean,
there is no way to convert.
if I am going to make this clear more, what I mean there is that
Yeah,
these people are just general creeps, and it isn't necessarily the kind of ideal that Islam or any sort of traditional view of Islam promotes. I would rather say that there is a difference between what these people are doing and, for example, the sex slavery that was done by ISIS when they took women and enslaved them and
Missouri girls,
had them
yeah,
as sex slaves. I do think that there is a difference here.
yeah,
I
like
do think that there is a difference
yeah,
in
we know
terms
there's
of
a crime.
religious adherence.
Yeah, there is a crime, but just like we have to
All
identify how
men can,
the
the
crime.
Judah Bibles, all men can be creeps, but sorry, Islam enables it. I would
It
say that
does.
certain traditions of Islam do create the kind of worldview or views on women. Certain traditions, not all, but certain do create the kind of atmosphere or environment where these kinds of subcultures do emerge. But I wouldn't say that it's a direct causation. It's
Because
very indirect.
I've seen this in Hindu circles as well too. The
You do, yeah, you do have
oh,
you do have.
we have the creepy Indian dude stereotype as well, which is of course like the result of like being from South Asia, that is. So and majority South Asians are Hindus, that is. So like so it doesn't so certain religions I do see certain religions, not just Islam, but also I've seen um
If
like
only I can find that articles. I remember reading one of the defendants said he was entitled because of the prophet. The Judah Bibles says.
interesting. This is very interesting. Like he felt that he was entitled to the because of the prophet. Like what is he doing, a sunnah or what? So he
I
found a way
mean,
to
I don't think that even if you are going to stretch it into taking
no, I'd
slaves
love to
and
read
having sex with them, or you know the marriage to Aisha. I don't think that those things are really comparable to this.
yeah, Aisha was like that. That was a straight up like child marriage. That is, and
Yeah, but it was still a child. It was some child marriage, but it was on the ordered forms within traditions of society. This isn't,
yeah, this
and
is
it was
more.
still with all of the parents consent and involvement and such. And it
Yeah,
was also, in those other cases, it was also very different. This isn't
yeah.
that. This
Muhammad,
is just a guy trying to, you know. I think that the defendant doing that, it was just him trying to take any sort of straw, you know,
yeah,
kind of find any sort of justification for his acts.
yeah. Because keep in mind,
It's kind of
Muhammad,
like people were doing the most messed up things in the medieval period that had nothing to do with Christianity in Europe, but they were justifying it by some sort of far-stretched
yeah, and though
Christian
keep
tradition
in mind,
or Christian words in the Bible as well.
keep in mind, Muhammad's crime status are similar to that of a cult leader today. That is, they're more like a cult leader. This isn't so much of a cult. This is a gang. That is, like
Yes.
crimes are have to be defined a bit differently. That is. So,
And
by the way,
also, I wouldn't even say that regular cult leaders were like him. He was like, he was a war leader of a war party of a
warlord. Yeah, a
medieval
warlord.
polity, a
Yeah, a
warlord of a medieval polity. It
yeah,
isn't the same as in modern day these people what they are doing. They are doing
yeah,
something very different in context and in type as
yeah,
well.
yeah. So the crimes are a bit different, but you could make the argument that hey, they in their mind, in the criminal's mind, they feel justified or they try to justify what they want. So
But
yeah. But
still,
anyway, let's continue. What sense chills down is the added vulnerability of the victims, primarily due to an unbothered administration. Authorities in Telford, this I agree with, an unbothered administration. Authorities in Telford came under heavy criticism for ignoring obvious signs of child exploitation. Inquiry into the decades-long scandal revealed that the probe agencies did not coordinate efficiently on the details of the cases. Some agencies also
it's a link to something. It's a link.
yeah, yeah.
What's the link
It's
to?
okay. Let me show you actually. It's from the Daily Mail actually. Let me just
All right.
show you one
Sure, the
second.
Daily Mail also has a rather strong bias, but at least I trust it a lot more than
Actually,
this Open
yeah. So
India.
this one, I'll just show this article actually. Here's screen. This one. So this is the Telford abuse case status. So come on. So this is from the Daily Mail, but okay. More than 1,000 children were raped and sexually exploited over 30 years in Telford, where police and council officials ignored abuse for years, fearing investigation gating Asian men would inflame racial tensions. Yeah, this is a more like accurate way to describe this. And more than 1,000 children were exploited, brainwashed by lover boy method, as men ran a Harvard house. Police and council officials in Telford ignored abuse for years over fears investigating Asian men would inflame racial tensions, and inquiry concluded. West Marcia police has apologized. Fuck this police. Like, seriously, what the fuck, guys? Like, seriously, 1,000 children, like, and Asian men, and again, they're seeing like all of, like of various Asian backgrounds, that is, not just Pakistani. A police inquiry ran by Telford and Brecon, a Sunday Mirror investigation concluded that 1,000 children could have been sexually exploited in the Shropshire town over a 30-year period. And this is from 2022, by the way. This is an article from 2022. Makes 47 recommendations for improvement among the involved agencies. After its chairman, Tom Crowther, concluded the abuse had gone unchecked for decades.
Yeah,
West Marcia police has apologized to children.
Might I add something?
Yeah.
This is the real problem here. This is the real problem.
Yeah.
The fact that people are so cowardly for being called out as a racist, and that people have created this sort of environment where people are so scared of being called racist or xenophobes or Islamophobes or whatever, that they do not act against this sort of blatant injustice and breaking of law.
Yeah. Like,
shame upon your cowardness. Shame upon it.
Shame upon the cowardness. I kid you not. Like, it's so bad that you are so scared of these people to be like.
I mean, I can understand being scared of them, because some of these people that do protect that do overreact when it comes to racism can go to extremely disturbing lengths because they think that
like
it's justified because I'm doing it against a racist. But you still have to act. You still have to protect children. You have to make sure that the law is followed here. You can't look the other way when these sorts of things are happening.
Absolutely, like especially like even
people
if
died with regards to this sexual abuse. Children died.
Yes, great. Like this is exactly what we're trying to get. Speaking on behalf of the force, Assistant Chief Police Constable Richard said, "I would like to say sorry to sir." Honestly, this is just like fuck, guys. Seriously, fuck. While there were no findings of corruption, our actions fell short of the help of and protection you should have had from us. It was unacceptable. I'm guessing these are new officers.
I would actually argue that what I found out when I read into these things a couple of years ago, I would argue that it was corruption. Because if you're not doing your job due to the fact that you fear reprisal, you're doing, not your job due to the fact that it would be better for you personally to not do your job, then you are actually doing corruption. Sure, it does not involve a second party, but it doesn't need to still be corruption. If you're, gaining yourself by having monetary gain through being, for working in these institutions, and you are getting compensated for your work, and you're not doing your work, then you're still doing a sort of corruption, even if the corruption is, stemming from you being a coward, being too afraid to do your proper function.
In terms of definition for this as well, on top of the corruption charges that the police might face, wouldn't on a personal level they be getting charged with being an accessory to a racket potentially?
I would say negligence. Negligence would be their biggest
negligence. Yes, that too. But you could actually argue for corruption and not only negligence, because there is kind of like, if you did do it due to overlooking it, due to mistake or something, due to extreme stupidity rather than outright fear, then it's negligence rather than corruption. But if you were doing it because you feared reprisal, or you feared that it would be bad for your career, and you didn't do your job,
you're aiding in the crime.
You did it due to corruption.
You're aiding in the crime itself. It is important now to take time to reflect critically on the consequences. The recommendations have been made. By the way, these are the
Reanimator has
these are the
pointed out first his statements. The Reanimator: Islam can justify anything because of Muhammad. A Christian cannot justify what Jesus never did. You cannot make that mistake in the 21st century. Can you click on his comments?
I mean, Islam can't just because of
I don't agree with this. And
in Christianity, more than
and it has the Old Testament, and also, for example, if you go into the Ethiopic church tradition of the Ethiopic Orthodox Tawahedo Church, they have a different canon when it comes to the New Testament, with more New Testament sources and more texts attributed to both Jesus and to his apprentices and followers. And in those texts, some of those are quite like the Old Testament in terms of brutality and what they call for. And also, Jesus, even in our traditions in the West, said that he didn't come to change a letter of the old law. And there all have been at various times throughout history where people have excused various extreme acts by things found in the Bible. And you can very much, and still, if you look at, for example, the law code of, but Jesus was sinless.
I don't care.
Maybe by Christian definitions, but by people that aren't following Christianity, we see it that there does include a lot of very questionable acts and prescriptions within Christianity.
Yeah.
Imagine the Christian theologians justifying sex slavery. Did it happen,
They
Genie?
actually did. They actually did. Like there was
In the Western world, I would say that generally they didn't justify sex slavery. They did justify slavery, though, generally.
well
But
in
they did justify, actually, if you look at the Ethiopic Christian tradition of the Fat and Agast, they did have various biblical justifications for how to keep slaves. I'm pretty sure they also included sex slavery there and discussed it, because that
No.
tradition is pretty close actually in how it discusses things.
Oh no, Ginny,
That
I was
it's
talking
quite similar actually to Islamic prescriptions with
Yeah.
regards to fiqh and Sharia.
now, Ginny, I was referring to the ones who, especially like those who resisted the abolishment of slavery, like the
Yeah.
reverend status. There's a history of reverends even justifying, like not just
Yeah. There is. I said that it's complicated. You do have Christians that argued against slavery,
Yeah.
all throughout the beginning of Christian history, and even during the period of abolishment in, for example, the colonies with the Civil War and everything in the United States. You do have people that argued for the abolishment through using Christian arguments, but you also have the opposite as well.
Yeah.
And also the reanimated. You can't compare Jesus and Muhammad.
Okay, I will judge religions by
Can you take his previous comments? You can't compare Jesus and Muhammad. Sure, you can. I mean, have you read the Reanimator? Have you read a lot of the Old Testament that Jesus refers to? Have you, for example, also read the for example Ethiopic traditions regarding Jesus? Because he is also clearly, for example, the Ethiopic Orthodox Church is a lot more orthopractical than what the Western traditions became, the Western Roman traditions. And also, you do have similar, ideals, even if they aren't as orthopractical, even in the Roman church traditions about Jesus and Muhammad. They didn't preach that different. The Old Testament is a Jesus, but Jesus said that you should follow the Old Testament in certain Christian traditions. And it was interpreted in certain traditions that the Old Testament is still valid in its law. For example, the Ethiopic Orthodox Christian tradition, you had periods in the 16th and 17th and even 18th century when the Old Testament was law within parts of it was law within the realm of the Swedish Empire. The Reanimator, I'm atheist and I judge the man, not the book. But I'm saying that Jesus is a lot more complex than most people give him credit for, and the traditions around him are very contradictory.
Yeah, and also we have to judge the book. We have to judge the
yeah.
And not just you just don't have to see the the founder as well. Also the context of the founder. Now Jesus did not have the power.
He didn't have the power. That's true as well. And he didn't. What is the worst thing Jesus did? Come on. I mean, the thing he said, literally, when he said, for example, in the Western Roman traditions, I would say the worst thing he did was when he said, not a letter of the old law will be changed. And,
I would actually say to the Reanimator, the worst thing he actually did was instead of making wine, he could have made some gin or some hard liquor. But
yeah, and not only that, like Jesus, also did Jesus? Muhammad didn't even write the book himself, too. Let's face it, Reanimator. In both cases, neither man wrote the book. The book, the Quran, was written by Zayd ibn Sabit.
I'm not defending Islam or trying to say that Christianity is worse or something. I'm just saying that I do admit that they do often result in practically different effects because they are different religious traditions with different scriptures, with different prescriptions and different traditions of interpretation. I'm not saying that they are the same, but I'm still saying that you could very well within Christian traditions interpret things that are just as brutal and messed up as the worst Islamic traditions in certain ways.
Interesting. Yeah, well, that would be interesting.
Because if you, especially, I mean, you do have those traditions within Christianity that have viewed the Old Testament as being, the law to follow.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
No,
Yeah.
and I can say you that there were, have been, traditions of. What about the hadiths? I mean, I'm not defending Islam here. I'm just saying that Christianity also has problem. The reanimator, you're saying I'm talking nonsense. Can you show the comment where he's
yeah.
saying
No,
that?
it's again like you're trying to like, you're
Because
trying to divert.
it's
No, no,
not me that I'm talking, because without
yeah.
this context, it might
Yeah,
be
Reanimator,
just that
don't
I'm
forget,
talking out.
you're using buzzwords. You're trying to like divert the conversation, but the focus is like what Ginny has said. They are different religions, yes, but he's not defending Islam, but he's saying that there are different, traditions like within each religion that is like just as problematic or could potentially be just as problematic.
Yes.
And
I'm not denying that Western Roman Christianity is not currently as problematic as Islam. And I do not think it will evolve to be as problematic, mainly due to the fact that it's not as orthopractical, it's not as focused upon concrete law to be applied. But
and also,
you do have certain non-European traditions of Christianity that still has, elements of this.
yeah. Oh my God, Reanimator. It's not as black and white. Like it's not. We're not stating it in black. He's not stating it in black and white terms. He's explaining the complexity of this. Don't take this. Sorry, Reanimator. No offense. You're taking this black and white. Things are fucking complex.
They are complex because you do. I mean, we actually don't.
We know that. We know that. You're saying as though we don't know this. We also don't know a lot of things about Muhammad, which is where he was in exactly.
And you have contradictory tales about his life as well, with various traditions having very different views upon it.
Yeah,
but Moose, if I was to ask though.
Yeah. No, right now that's not the discussion of what we know about Muhammad and Christianity. Right now the discussion is the discussion is about the grooming gang status. The discussion is, is a bit different. That is for today. Yeah, sorry, Nick, you were saying. Nick, you there?
I hope he didn't drop out or get issues.
Oh no, yo, Nick, you there?
Yeah, I'm here. So I just wanted to ask something.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, because when it comes to Muhammad, we know everything about all the battles very generic, all the way down to how Aisha couldn't wash the cum off his shirt before he went to prayer.
Yeah, of course.
So it's everything. The way it's accounted for Muhammad is a lot different than the way it's accounted for. Jesus.
I would want to say that this is kind of like half true, because this has its origins in how the Roman church tradition evolved. If you look, for example, in the Armenian church tradition, or the church tradition that evolved in the Church of the East, or even in the Ethiopic tradition, you do have tales about Jesus and tales about his followers, his disciples, and they are actually quite similar to the Hadith traditions. They are called, I think they are called hakahat, the tales, which is kind of like, it's kind of similar because hikaya is tale in Arabic.
Interesting.
And it's kind of like synonymous with Hadith. And they do have kind of like Hadith stories about Jesus and his disciples.
Okay, that's very interesting. Actually, I actually did not know about this.
And those traditions are a lot more like, you know how the Quran isn't that bad, but it's the Hadiths that usually make Islam.
Yeah.
in considering which hadith you include, make it usually a lot more brutal. It's kind of like the same in the Orthodox Tawahidu Church and their traditions and their legalistic practices, which is kind of like interesting because in Judaism it was like they started with, the the Torah and the rest of the Tanakh. And then they had all of these, the Talmuds, usually these stories and these rabbinical traditions and these secondary texts, in order to make it less brutal.
No, again, like, and also because we also have to keep in mind that these are two very different historical figures, right?
Yeah.
So we can't compare apples to, like, let's just say, this wouldn't even be an orange. It would be like comparing an apple to, like, a mango, for example, because of the context of their historical situation. Like, Muhammad was a warlord of a tribe, for example. Whereas, Jesus was like this individual dude who did not have the strength of a tribe and was living under Roman occupation. So these are very different, also, like, historical circumstances as well too. Had Jesus been in the same position as Muhammad, maybe.
Look at the Reanimator says Christians have behaved badly, but they cannot justify being PDF files.
Pedophiles.
I mean, you can justify it if you say that, for example. I mean, again, if we look at, for example, the marriage laws, I do remember this in, the Fata Nagast, which is kind of like this law code about Ethiopic biblical law. They do justify it by going back to, the marriage ages found in the Old Testament.
Yeah, so, I mean, like, you can say definitely the Quran is bad. There's no denying that. There's no denying.
We aren't saying that the Quran is good. We are just saying that Christianity does have enough traditions with the Old Testament and other third literatures and traditions of interpretation that makes it potentially as bad as.
Well, also, like, with the Quran itself too. Like, the Quran, if you take it from its, like, face value, you have Quran only Muslims. It's very, like, like, very different than hadith status too, and and again, like, it's just, like, even very different. So we're also trying to compare, like, two very different religions and how they evolved very differently too. They have the same core beliefs, like, so, also, Jenny, she is a big explanation. Yeah, again, we're talking different issues. We're talking different.
Yes.
For the time being.
I'm talking about, historically and the traditions themselves. Yeah, I'm not talking about practical application.
Yeah. We're not saying, like, like what modern Christians or modern Jews are doing. That is, like, we're not arguing against that. We're just saying, like, there has been a history. It's like the teachings are rather, like,
yeah, I would say that there is nothing. I mean, I would argue that orthopractical traditions have a harder time modernizing due to the fact that you have then a focus upon concrete actions and concrete laws to follow, rules to follow.
We have to clarify the terms. The guys, you're not getting the term orthopraxy and orthodoxy. That is,
orthodoxy is true belief. Orthopraxy is,
the action.
Pure, focus upon actions. Orthodoxy, focus upon faith. Orthopraxy, focus upon actions.
And Christian in general is more orthodoxy, whereas Islam is more orthopraxy. That is, by nature. That is.
Most traditions within Christianity are not orthopractical. Again, I took the Ethiopic Orthodox Tawahidu Church because it is an example of a tradition that is like that.
Yeah.
And you do have certain Protestant traditions that have been like that at certain times. For example, the Swedish church in the 16th, 17th, and 18th century was very much like that too, because we integrated into Swedish law Old Testament law.
But anyway, let's finish the articles because we've taken a lot of, like, derailments. And again, like, let's just you know, like, oh my god, don't. Okay, let's just stop this, like, discussion, because again, you're kind of like pulling in different like topics and different things into, like, the topic that
I'm
we're
saying that
clarifying.
it has been interpreted like that,
Yeah,
kind of like that.
yeah.
Yes,
So
traditionally, historically. I'm not saying that Christians are as likely, generally on a global scale, to do this as, for example, certain traditions within Islam currently. But it's important to note that you do have had historically similar issues.
yeah, but anyway, now let's get
Yeah.
back to like the subject matter at hand, because again, I'm kind of tired of seeing this dancing guy in the poker ad. So um so it's like in children in Telford were brainwashed for years, brought them alcohol, cigarettes. Again, similar story, lover boy method. Girls who were much younger and vulnerable to targeted, who were much younger, would meet on the street or who might be a taxi or food delivery and persuaded to become their girlfriend. In inquiry in the decades of abuse in the Shropshire town said. A police witness told the inquiry, which published its findings, that the typical perpetrator plan was to meet as many girls as possible, particularly those on the edge of a friendship groups or who seemed to be craving attention. The men might start giving a child a lift, buying them fast food, alcohol, and cigarettes, and then topping up their mobile phones, all in the bid to convince the girl they were in a loving relationship. Yikes. And this is a very impressionable age, too. It was by far the most common method by which children were introduced to child sexual exploitation, in what studies called boyfriend or lover boy model. Having done so, men would encourage the child to become involved in sexual activity to establish control. The inquiry chair, Tom Crowther, said the nature of the crimes often involved brainwashing young people into believing they were in meaningful, loving, and reciprocal relationships, even if such apparent reciprocity involved them engaging in things that deep down they knew did not want to do. Although some children spoke to professionals about their situations, for some time those professionals failed to understand that these relationships were exploitative. Yikes. The inquiry discovered that victims found it difficult to escape their abuse and in many cases did not even recognize themselves as being victims, with the situation having become a way of life to which they had become accustomed to. Yes, this is a method how abusers kind of like, um, make their, like, what do you call it? How abusers, this is how abusers groom children. This is what we call grooming, that is. The inquiry also heard that offenses took place in various known licensed premises in the area, in nightclubs, restaurants, and takeaway establishments, with children being pimped out and taken into rooms within the premises to be exploited. So this is fucking disturbing. This is
I
very
hope this is one of those instances where I really, really, feel that or rather, I wish that I still believed in a God, and I still believed in the hell that these people ought to end up in.
yeah, I know these people. Like, I definitely want them to, like, burn in a fire, in a literal fire. The reported one of the shocking pieces he had read related, which was described as a Harwood House in Wellington, which it became clear had been operating for years. The report highlighted witness testimony suggesting Asian men were not targeted as part of investigations because it would have been too politically incorrect. And this is the problem we're saying. With one police saying we're found to have dropped the case like a hot potato if such complaints were made. One witness claimed police were frightened to question or challenge because of the ethnicity of the people involved, amid fears they could be labeled as racist. Girls were subjected in, like, again, this is the cowardice of the system. Girls were subjected in severe cases to death threats against themselves or their families if they tried to put a stop to the abuse, the inquiry heard. The report said in some cases, threats were reinforced by reference to the murder of Lucy Lowe, who died alongside her mother, sister, and unborn child in August 2000. Abusers would remind girls of what happened to Lucy Lowe and would tell them that if they would be next if they said anything. Every boy would mention it. In 2001, the 26-year-old driver, Azhar Ali Mahmood, was handed 4 life sentences when he was jailed for the murders of Lucy Lowe, 16, Sarah Lowe, 17, and 49-year-old Aileen Lenda Lowe in 2001. So in 2020, the jealous and possessive Mahmoud had a bid to be freed from jail rejected. The inquiry published today reported that unnecessary suffering and even deaths of children might have been avoided had West Mercia Police, WMP, had done its basic job on acting on reports of such basic crime. And for decades, child exploitative sexual exploitation thrived in Shropshire Town and went unchecked because of the failures of the investigative offenders. And protect children amid fears to probes into Asian men would inflame racial tensions. So this is the huge problem. Let's see, how long is this article actually? Features that being shocking. So, like, they suggested 47 recommendations, set in evidence appalling and suffering. He added, the overwhelming theme of the evidence has been appalling and suffering of generations of children caused by the utter cruelty of those who committed child sexual exploitation. Victims and survivors repeatedly told Inquiry how, when they were children, adult men worked to gain their trust before ruthlessly betraying their trust, treating them as sexual objects or commodities. Countless children were sexually assaulted and R-worded. They were deliberately humiliated and degraded. They were shared and trafficked. They were subject to violence, and their families were threatened. They lived in fear, and their lives would forever change. He said that for decades, CSC thrived in town for unchecked, and agencies, including Council and WMP, were aware of it in detail, adding failure by agencies to investigate emboldened offenders, failure to safeguard put children at risk. And yeah, this is the kind of thing that emboldens these guys. So far as both the Council and WMP, a number of features appear to have contributed to this shock and focus upon abuse within the family at the expense of extrafamilial exploitation over caution about acting in the absence of hard evidence. A formal complaint of a child about exploitation and the nervousness of that investigating concerns against Asian men in particular would inflame racial tension. So by the way, this is Azhar. This is another. These are the few perpetrators who have been jailed. The chairman described the culture of not investigating what was regarded as child prostitution and said the force turned a blind eye and chose not to see what was obvious. Said the absence of police action had emboldened offenders, and is impossible not to wonder how different lives would have been. It's also impossible, in my view, not to conclude there was no real chance then. He also criticized the glaring failure on the part of the generation of Telford's politicians not to regard sexual exploitation response as an essential service in the period before 2016. In a statement, Telford and Brecon Council has said apologize wholeheartedly to the victims. This is, by the way, they do this. This is actually a timeline of abuse, that is. So 1980s, girls in Telford targeted mainly Asian men. A resident goes to police with information about key abuser in 1996, selling underage girls for sex. Late 1990s, social workers learn of the problem but do little to help. Even the social workers are fucking complicit in this. Lucy Lowe, 16, is killed alongside her mother and sister by abuser Azhar Ali Mahmood. Abuser victim Becky Watson, 13, killed in a road accident described as a prank. 2010 to 2012, police probe operation. Charles identifies 200 abusers, but only 9 are jailed. MP Lucy Allen calls for public inquiry, but police and council officials in Telford write to Home Secretary Amber Root saying this isn't necessary. And March 2018, as many as 1,000 victims are believed to have been abused. And again, there's a lot of details that is Ali, Ahmad Ali and his brother, like a gang of 7. So there's various gangs. Ali brothers were found guilty in 2012. Offenses against 4 girls from 13 to 17, including rape, sexual activity with a child, and inciting and controlling child prostitution and rape. During the Ali brothers trial, Stafford Crown Court heard the pair groomed 2 girls, 15 and 16, for sex before proceeding to work as prostitutes for them in 2008. The pair were found guilty of 24 offenses, including controlling of child prostitution, people trafficking. Then there's an exploitation. Now, 5 other men. Jesus Christ, there's so many of these. Jesus. And I know, I'm ironically using the name of Jesus. It's, what do you call it?
Yeah,
what do you call
I'm
it?
just feeling, oh my non-existent god when I'm
Uh,
viewing this.
just gave birth to his child when she was 14. Yikes! There's also these cases. I'm just looking at. I'm trying to crack cocaine. So this gets more and more disturbing because this is very detailed, very very detailed. So
Yes.
like I said, we gave a trigger warning. So this is a very very sensitive subject matter. So all in all, like we've kind of agreed that we're very very complicit in this scandal. That is, and we have finally like addressed the matter of the grooming gang status, and it's but anyway, do you guys have any takes or anything like about the subject matter?
Not much more than I've already added about this being a result of cowardness upon the, cowardness of the authorities that should have intervened much earlier and
Yeah.
prevented this.
Also, yeah, Seitan or Nick, you want to say?
Oh no, I think you guys covered most of it. That's why I was so silent for this one, because this kind of does make my stomach turn.
Yeah,
Yes,
it's very disturbing. It's very disturbing. You know what? As promised, though, as promised, we're gonna like I know we're gonna take a short sort of a break from this serious subject
I
matter.
just wanted to add one thing before we do take a break.
Yeah.
Just like the previous session where we were, going through the stupidity of individuals. In this case,
Yeah.
it was not stupidity. In this case, it was just pure evil
Mm,
made by individuals, committed by individuals. I would say that just as back there, I would say that this has less to do with Islam and more to do with the context around and people being just bad generally and just defending themselves by being quoted in a context where people don't want to touch these issues due to fear of trampling certain toes or going against certain taboos in society.
yeah,
And it's frustrating when it's
it
this
is.
bad.
It really is, to be honest. And it is something that I wish this shit didn't happen. And of course, they're gonna justify it in some way, or some people are gonna justify it in some way. That you need to understand the area. You tell us about the area there, like so, like what's happening to understand the area there. Because I mean, like you could justify it with Islam, but like I wouldn't say it's not so much of a conversion thing, but rather like I wouldn't like not sex
No.
slavery. Like we did establish earlier, sex slavery is very different.
Yeah.
This is a pedophile ring.
This is a jihad.
I wouldn't say this is a jihad, though.
No, it isn't. Can you show the reanimator comment? It was he saying that this is a jihad.
No, it's not. I don't.
Most click upon his comments so that
the definition is different. This is the definition.
the one before when he says this is a jihad, because I wanted to clarify it was not me saying this. It was me reading his comment.
Yeah, I
would say that this isn't a jihad. This is just a couple of perverted swine doing illegal acts.
Yeah, and I think like
ought to be punished by the full extent of the law of the land.
Yeah, like, and they should have been punished. Like, this was the authorities were like aiding and abetting and fucking negligent on this matter. And not only that, like we also like also I wouldn't say it's yeah, it isn't jihad, because jihad is defined very differently in like the, at least in the Islamic definition. That
I mean, there is a difference if you take your buddies and go on a war party and officially defeat your enemies in straight up battle, and then or do raids and take women, like in kind of like this sort of glorified warrior culture way, and doing what these fucking animals did. There is a difference.
No, I would say the Taliban, what the Taliban do with child marriages, or like,
Yeah, there I have a case to argue it, but this isn't
different.
it.
Yeah,
This is different. Yes.
because keep in mind, like, and I worked in the area, 1 year contract. I spent 2 months in the same house and tried to convert it. I mean, that's different though. That's different from a grooming gang. That is. It's
Yeah, I still think that this shouldn't be seen as a type of jihad. It should just be seen generally as criminal
crime.
activity.
It's crime. Let's just say that it's
Yeah,
crime.
it's just crime. Yes.
Dude, are you okay? Dude, I literally defined it. Concubines are different. Prostitution is different. Literally,
in that case, it was kind of like viewed and kind of like done as an act of official open warfare. It's kind of like different from this sort of sneaky stuff.
Yeah, this one's more domestic, whereas that one was more like, again, we're talking definitions. That is.
Yeah.
Now, I wouldn't say they're concubines per definition, but they're definitely. I mean, there
technically concubinatus or concubina from Latin actually had another definition.
Yeah.
But that's another discussion.
However, Ginny, there are issues with exploitation, trafficking. This is definitely trafficking.
Yes.
For sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I'm saying, but it's still different from.
Dude, we're talking about the kids in the UK.
Yes.
The Yazidis were concubines. The kids were used as prostitutes, or they're trafficking victims.
I mean, the thing that ISIS did was also kind of like in an open way, in a kind of like, it was an imitation of like war. It was a very cheap imitation as well of medieval warfare type stuff being done in the Middle East. It wasn't like what is done here. Here it was, in the case of the UK, it was just general crime.
And again, like, they can justify it with using Islam, and the defendants have used Islam to justify it.
Yes, but it's not really. Yeah, it's just a defense much more than it's a legitimate theological argument. What ISIS did, at least, has some basis in theological traditions about warfare and and the raids and the traditions regarding them. But this, what's done here in what was done here in the UK, Rotherham, Rotherham, and that is much more just an example of creeps justifying things through religion rather than there being a legitimate tradition.
It's more of an organized crime. This is more of an organized crime ring rather than sure, you can use Islam as a justification for it, but definitely this is an organized crime ring for sure. And the perpetrators used.
I mean, it also involved non-Muslims, admittedly, even by the in that Indian article. Yeah. So people were in on it just because, not because they were believing Muslims, but just because they were perverted degenerates.
Yeah, and a vast majority of them were Muslim.
Yes, I was majority, but they didn't do it because of some sort of theological tradition. And also they worked with non-believers in doing this as well.
I mean, like, let's face it, they could be by some mentality or some some weird, like, they could be potentially. We're not ruling.
You cannot claim that it is not influenced by 1514. I mean, you cannot. I just did claim that this has very little to do with it. I just did.
Yeah, but it's just like, it's, you could potentially say it is, but at the same time, it's like we're not. No guys, Islam.
Did you buy this? Look at his comment. No, but Islam enables it. Come on, Genie, you must admit it. No, because still, even if, I mean, yeah, Islam has many different traditions. They aren't all the same. But generally, see, Islam does not permit this sort of actions. I mean, this is kind of like the sort of sneaky things. I mean, you also need to consider that even when you took, slaves like that in open warfare, there was still kind of like an element of honor in it. You took it in open warfare. You didn't after you had taken over an area and said, now we are, in control, you pay jizya and our dimmies. You didn't go around and be a total asshole and just rape people randomly. Or, go into and do these sort of acts either.
Yeah, I mean, there's no honor in slavery, though. To be honest, there's no honor.
I'm not saying that it's honorable to go around and do it, but there is still a kind of like concept there of honor and kind of, justified slavery, if you would say so. In a kind of way that doesn't exist here.
Yeah.
You're making this up. The reanimator is saying, no, I'm not. There very much is kind of like a concept here of how you go about doing this that makes what ISIS did in their own messed up worldview different from what was done here.
Yeah, because like
Most, can you click up his comments so it doesn't look just that I'm speaking out in thin air?
I mean, Judavitis, you do have a point about the sexual repression, but this happens in India too, which is not an Islamic society.
But I would say it happens in most really orthodox religions. So religions fundamentally do have a play.
And we do have a sexual repression happens in like very religious.
I'm not denying this. I'm not denying this. Absolutely. I'm not denying that this could play a part in it. I'm not saying that this, but I'm saying that there is no direct theological tradition that says go around and act like a pimp in Christian lands or something like that.
Yeah, no, there's no like Sharia or
and there definitely is, laws about if you do visit other lands that you are currently not doing raids upon, as for example a merchant. For example, I mean, you had laws developed from the Muslims that went over into Ethiopia during the persecutions and how they ought to act there. That is very different from this sort of these sort of actions.
No, absolutely. But yeah, it's
I'm just saying that just because Islam is very problematic, it does not mean that we can ascribe every sort of problematic action done by individual Muslims or groups of Muslims to Islam or Islamic traditions.
Well, and the thing is, this is a different crime. This is more of a racket status. It's a pedophile ring. And pedophile rings also exist in the United States, in North America.
I mean, it's just that this one could grow this big and be this unopposed due to the facts of cultural issues and a cultural context of not actually, enforcing laws that need to be enforced due to the fear of facing backlash.
Just to confirm, what's the difference between a racket and a gang?
So, like, a racket. Actually, let me just pull up the definition, the legal definition. 1 second.
Because I know it varies per institution that's using it. Because someone like R. Kelly got arrested for racketeering.
Racketeering okay, so I'm just saying. Okay, so a racket is a fraudulent and often illegal activity that is often carried out by means of extortion and intimidation. That's what a racket is. I'm just looking at, it's a type of organized crime in which persons set up coercive, fraudulent, and extortionary or otherwise illegally coordinated schemes or operations. So the racket itself is kind of like an operation. It's like an organized operation of its sorts. The gang itself, the criminal gang, is like the men, that is. The men. So this is where, like, so it's so this is where the difference is. Oh yeah, Ginny, the prophet. Now here's the thing, though. Fucking your wives. It's actually the strength of not 30 men. It was like the strength of 100 men or something like that. The sexual strength. Now, problem is this doesn't have anything to do with sexual strength, though. This is more to do with like just kidnapping children, and like it's definitely like a different crime. That is. Now, what Muhammad did was to his wives, like one of them being a 9-year-old, but definitely like Muhammad had a more of a sex addiction problem rather than actual. Like, again, you can, based on the hadith, that is, he had a more of a sex addiction problem based on the sources we know. So, oh yeah, Roland Keith been way over there in Australia. Yeah, I mean, like, if you were watching, like, we were talking about the Rotherham scandal. That is. Let me just display the article again. So, whoops, there we go. Yeah, so this is the article. Like, yeah, these are the articles that we were talking about, like the Rotherham scandal, which is about like the child exploitation, sexual exploitation of children. That is, and like and especially like the National Crime Agency. This is also an interesting finding that mostly white girls had been groomed and sexually abused by in South Yorkshire and town of Rotherham between 1990 by predominantly British Pakistani men, and that while authorities had known about it, they did nothing to stop it. So definitely this was, of course, there were other men such as like of Iranian, Turkish.
That's all the white privilege.
Yeah. Shut up, boy. Shut up. No. But yeah, I think someone mentioned earlier that there was this weird fetish for like white skin, that is, and it does definitely play a part in this too. And I think like 110 suspects, 80% of them, of that number, 38 have been arrested, 18 have been charged, 2 cautioned, and 4 convicted. According to Stovewood, investigation officer, new suspects are being identified all the time. In 1 days, a victim was resolved for police identifying 17 other victims, 30 suspects, and 27 possible crime scenes. So yeah, this is quite a huge problem that the UK government or the UK authorities had been like ignoring for such a while. By the way, I won't cover Islamic horror today because yeah, we just like we're almost passing the 2-hour mark. But yeah, like
we're at the 2-hour mark. Yeah, it's probably not best to like do any further because that.
Yeah. You know what? I'll cover it next week. I'll cover like horror movies by Islam. Yeah, honestly, this is where I agree with you. The police did sell out the ghosts. They fucking.
Yes,
it was
they
fucking
did.
disgusting.
That's what I wanted to focus upon, the fact that they were so terrified of eventual backlash that they didn't do their job.
Yeah.
That's
honestly,
the issue here.
Yeah, and honestly, like what pisses me off is that they were scared of being labeled not only just racist but also Islamophobic or any xenophobic or anything like that, any form of fucking phobic, just because they didn't want to stop a crime. And they aided these criminals, like because the criminals were able to use either their Muslim or minority identities as a shield to commit these crimes. So it's like this is where the fucked up thing is. Where yeah. Again, we all can't agree on everything, but yeah, no problem, Roland Keith, no problem. Yeah, we're just filling in on this scandal, and hopefully, I really want the police and like the authorities to actually fucking step up their game. I don't care if they're a Pakistani community, like or they're of like a Muslim minority or any fucking minority. That is, like, this needs to be addressed. And yeah, like it said, despite the fact those behind the abuse were mostly Asian and the victims were young, counselors didn't engage with the town's Pakistan at all during the inquiry. This is reported due to the fear of being labeled racist, which counselors feared would threaten community cohesion. And like, yeah, this is when you need to have a fucking backbone. Have a fucking backbone. I'm sorry if you're dropping the bomb. Have a fucking backbone and address the issue. Don't like. I get it. Like you know, you want to create like community cohesion, and like there are people who are gonna play victim. You got to do the right thing now. You got to not be scared for your like future and shit. And this is, I think you know, there's an anime that weirdly covered something like this, where um, there was a community that was like seen as threatening, but the mayor did not want to do anything because they were from like a minority community or something like that. So it's very like, you know, similar. I try to find that anime scene that is. Yeah, I know it's fucking ridiculous. It's ridiculous. You guys have any takes? Any? I know it makes, this is the kind of topic that makes your stomach churn and shit. And you know, it's, yeah.
I
I'm sorry, guys. I
for me, the only way I can stomach this kind of thing is my humor, but this is also the topic where you don't want much humor. It's why I kept my
No.
mouth shut for majority of it.
yeah. So I'm gonna also title this video "Grooming Gangs," just to like, you know, just to like see that, you know, this topic needs to be um like, what do you call it, the topic needs to be addressed, that is, you know. So yeah, but yeah, thank you guys for joining in. I think we have 5 minutes left. Anything else that you guys wanted to add?
That's it for me.
All right, thank you. So yeah, this is the, and Ginny, do you have anything to add, or do you want to?
I just wanted to say again that this has less to do with Islam and more to do with the culture of fear and trying to avoid accusations of Islamophobia and racism causing major issues when it results in the, for example, the authorities, in this case the police, not doing their work and thus causing undue suffering.
Yeah, and
for
Trevor
innocence.
Phillips, anti-racism TASR of Labor, said this is a problem. He got, yeah, this is the kind of fucking thing.
Yeah.
Don't fucking do
This is an issue. This is what we should focus upon. That you can't discuss these things. That you can't discuss the fact of the matter that we have various gangs, or we have, you know, groups that do commit crimes or acting, you know, extremely badly with impunity, using, but they are not confronted due to this fear,
like,
due to the fact that you get attacked if you confront them by accusations of racism.
Yeah,
This is the issue.
If anything,
Not
anything, like if you can say like, yeah, sure, Islam enables it, whether or not that's the UK government, the UK officials enabled this.
Yes, they did.
And yeah, but I know. Oh, thank you, Drew Dividus. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
We needed to address this issue. Nick and I had been talking about this for a while. We needed to talk about this, and a lot of people don't like talking.
I would like to mention we were talking about it in a negative sense, where it was vile and not in a positive sense. For the record.
Yeah, we were not talking like intellectuals. We were probably talking like two dudes who were just saying, "Yo, this is fucked up," and stuff like that. You know, that's the, imagine this language, but add in more swear words. Add in more swear words. Yes, I know.
I usually find this shit when I'm high on weed, the medical grade stuff. So that's where it came from.
Boy, no drugs, no drugs. Dudabitis, I know, like you mentioned the drugs thing. No drugs.
Oi, it's fucking legal in Canada. I get the medical grade shit for my prescription. There's nothing wrong with it. I smoke in my own fucking house.
Yeah, I know. Cannabis is legal here. But anyway, like I know, Jinny, you're already like taking the stick and you're dipping it in Zamzam water. But no, thank you guys so much. Thank you, audience members, for engaging us in different conversations. These are difficult conversations we should have, and you know, thank you guys so much. And take care, everybody. If so, any of you going to Discord?
I am going to go to Discord now.
Yeah, okay. So Ginny is going to be in Discord. Actually,
and
Nick,
I believe Jude Abides, I think, was there before as well. But yeah, he's not there anymore.
Okay, yeah. So
right.
Nick, are you going to go to? I won't be at Discord, but Nick, can you post the link?
I'm going to be there. I'll post the link here. One sec.
Thank you.
And I have a request.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, never mind. It's probably best I don't say the request.
Yeah, and also, like, this is the link, by the way. This is the Discord link, and just all right. See everybody later. And
I was gonna say if the
See you
Seinfeld ever
later.
made a
I'm leaving
uh,
now. And
All
take
right.
care. I was just gonna say if Seinfeld ever made a parody of this, they probably would have been Pakistani guy driving automatic, his
God damn it,
white bride driving stick shift.
boy, boy, boy. All right. I'm gonna let that slide. I'm gonna let that slide. All right. Take
You
care,
guys-
everyone. I'm ending the stream now.